Good morning. Harris County Sheriff Ed Gonzalez, very impactful video, and I think it does a wonderful job. Nicolas, to you, Frida, and the team, fantastic job. Maria, everyone did a fantastic job, really, in a real concise way, really highlighting what ShotSpotter is all about. It's technology, and it's a great tool for law enforcement. I know here at the Harris County Sheriff's Office that we've benefited greatly from it, and we look for its continued presence and also expansion as we continue to move forward. We'll get into that briefly in terms of some of my observations about the program, but at this point, it's a great honor of mine, a personal privilege of mine, to be able to recognize the person that really made this possible by having the vision and understanding the technology, having been in the role, having understood the concerns of the community to say what else can be done, and then going out there and making it happen. So it's a great honor to welcome a personal friend, a former sheriff, and now Precinct 2 Commissioner Adrian Garcia to tell us more about this pilot program. Commissioner.
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you. Good morning. Sheriff, one point of personal privilege. If you could give Deputy Suarez a direct order to stand over here.
Suarez, come stand over here. Richie, you stand over here too.
Come on, guys.
I was going to mention them in a little bit.
Yeah, but thank you. They don't listen to civilians. But listen, this is an exciting morning, and a year ago, on March 31st, we deployed ShotSpotter, and so here we are a year later. We committed to you, the media, to provide progress and updates about this technology, this initiative. It's a pilot project. We have just completed year 1 of a 3-year pilot initiative in the Aldine area, and the data is immensely clear. But let me just make one point. This technology, this initiative makes the commitment that if you're illegally firing a weapon, we will find you and we will bring you to the Harris County Crossbar Hotel. You will have not entirely a free room to us, but it will be free to you. You'll get 3 meals, I think, Sheriff, and but we will find you a room for you to occupy, and maybe not with the best residents. This is investing in public safety, and investing in public safety has never been as simple as the political messaging that you tend to hear. However, ShotSpotter is part of a broader approach that includes a number of initiatives that we have put in place to keep the community safe. It's an important piece of the puzzle, and Aldine has proven to be a perfect place to deploy ShotSpotter. And in addition to everything that we've invested county-wide, there's some information that my team will be happy to share with you. It'll just further accentuate our commitment to keeping all areas of Harris County safe. ShotSpotter may not be right for every neighborhood, but for Aldine, it has been a godsend. And you'll be hearing more about that from the Executive Director of the East Aldine Management District, Mr. Richard Cantu. But the short of it is that ShotSpotter is a 21st century solution to a decades-old problem. The data does not lie. It does not discriminate. So we utilize technology to help hesitant residents, as Deputy Suarez mentioned in the video, to help provide them the safety that they deserve. We will never stop trying to keep people safe. There are a lot of reasons crimes go unreported, and for that to change, we need to show the community that we have their backs, and we do. We won't allow people to be terrorized by gun violence because criminals capitalize on their fear and their fear of reporting. And I've always thought that action was more important than just talk. Anything that shows that the potential to put bad people behind bars improves public and community relations and increases safety are always possibilities that we, and I in particular, will absolutely consider. And so, Sheriff Gonzalez, I want to thank you and your team for their commitment, their dedication. We can always bring initiatives to the table, but unless your team really sees the value in it, they won't have the buy-in. And absolutely, we're so proud of Deputy Suarez and her work, her leadership on the community, but it takes a leader to support these initiatives, and we thank you for that. And so I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. And as the Commissioner stated, it does take an entire team to make sure that a rollout and implementation is ultimately successful. And owe a lot of gratitude to Sergeant Ritchie that really spearheaded our effort from the beginning. Once we made that possible, he's the one that had to get up to speed on the program, make sure we were connecting with the leadership of ShotSpotter, really understand it, making sure we were talking to community partners and informing them of how it worked, making sure we were tweaking it, making sure that our emergency dispatch center also was equipped to know how to respond in terms of operationally, how to make sure that we had a good rollout. So it takes a lot of work. And again, you know, she really is a rock star for us. We love Deputy Suarez and really highlighting the amazing work. And I think that the video really spoke to a lot of it, listening to her perspective as a mother to say, you know, I want to make sure that my family would be safe. And I could imagine living in a place that's always riddled with gunfire and the fear and all that. And for her to go out there and be making a difference and putting herself on the line to respond to these calls is really commendable. She's really fantastic. And one of the things that really drew my attention when we were looking at ShotSpotter is we understand the technology, we understand the brain power in making it happen, but the folks like Deputy Suarez are actually out there receiving the calls and having to respond and making arrests and being proactive. You know, she touched on a number of things already, but you know, sometimes obviously working at night, you get out there, it's dark. Historically, what would happen is you get a call for service, it would be heard gunshots in the area. Well, you get out there, you're talking multiple blocks. Now she could more, in a more targeted way, go to where those shots were fired, potentially find some firearms evidence that now could provide an actionable lead. And we've seen where sometimes that's happened. It's led us to perhaps evidence that was used or a gun that was potentially used in other violent crimes. Now we have a potential lead that we didn't have before. She's made arrests of people that were out there firing the guns. And she's heard from the community that they do appreciate the added response and the quicker response. This is a priority one for us, correct, Sergeant Ritchie? So it's a priority one where before it was a lower level priority because we didn't have specifics. All we know is there's gunfire in the area. That's a very general report. And so now having a place where we could go directly, and she referenced a colleague that potentially saved a life because of the quick response, that's money for us. That's what we suit up every day, is go out there and protect and serve and potentially save someone's life. And it allows us to use this technology to do that, recover stolen guns that many times land in wrong hands and are used for criminality. We see that far too often. We've been able to recover guns like that. Now the reporting of these calls, thanks to the technology, is a much higher percentage of response. We've measured it historically, the number of calls for service that we would get, and it was much lower than now than what we have via ShotSpotter because it's being reported to us in real time. The response is much quicker, and also, again, now being able to respond where before those calls maybe just went unaddressed, that firearms evidence just stayed out there, and it set a culture in the community that this was acceptable, and it's not acceptable. People get hurt. We've seen people gotten killed by random celebratory gunfire, and we wanted to send a message that it was unacceptable, and thanks to the Commissioner's investment in this area, we've been able to do much better. There's still other steps that we would like to include in this to make sure that we continue to be as effective as possible. We're working on those additional responses to the community. But again, I think we're off to a very good start, and we look forward to the continuation of this 3-year pilot program and possibly expanding some of the geographic area as well, when and if it makes sense. And I remember early on then when I asked our team, what's the area that we have the most gunfire or calls for service related to discharging firearms, it was always the Aldine community. And even then, leading from the front, as he always has been Richard Gantu. And he would hold press conferences, some of you may have been there, at our dispatch center, reminding people celebratory gunfire is illegal, you'll go to jail. We had those press conferences out there. Why? Because that's where it was happening, and that's where ShotSpotter's at. And so he had the vision back then of trying to bring people together to raise awareness, but we didn't have this tool at that time. Now we do. And so here to speak about that is just a wonderful leader, a friend, and a great mentor over the years as well, and a great leader, and just so excited to see his leadership out there and really the East Aldine community being transformed as we speak. Is the Executive Director of the East Aldine District. We have Richard Cantu. Richard?
Thank you, Sheriff. Thank you, Commissioner. This is kind of personal for me. This law enforcement tool has brought is a game changer for our community, especially in Aldine, which as you've heard, has a high incidence of celebratory gunfire, especially around 4th of July and New Year's, and it's something that's really dangerous. It's been proven, and so before our deputies would respond to these calls of gunfire, and I myself have called it in because I live also in the area, and you hear it, and the best thing you can do is guesstimate. Oh, it's at the corner of such and such street, and it's really hard to know exactly where it's coming from. But this technology has provided an important tool for our deputies to know literally within half a block or maybe even a couple of properties where the gunfire is coming from. And I think within the first month, some of our deputies that are on contract with the East Aldine District arrested two guys that had been discharging an automatic weapon along the Greens Bayou, and they responded right away, and they caught them coming back out from the banks of the bayou with their automatic weapons, and so they were arrested. And but every month we get reports from our contract commander, Lieutenant Santos, and we're seeing it. We're seeing the evidence that they're finding the casings, the shell casings. Sometimes they're making arrests, taking guns off the street. It's making our community safer. And right now it only covers 4 to 5 miles of area where it tracks and picks up the gunfire. But we need to expand it. And so I call on the commissioner and the sheriff to continue to work to expand this. I call on Commissioners Court to make more funding available to make this something available across the county so that more neighborhoods that also are experiencing this kind of celebratory gunfire and just random, I call it stupidity because, it's dangerous to shoot in the air and they think they're just having fun showing off their gun, but the bullet's going to come down somewhere and it's endangering our community. And we just can't have that anymore. We need to put a stop to it, and this tool is helping us find those guys that are doing it. So we're grateful to be the pilot location, the pilot project area for this, and it's making a difference. And we are grateful to the commissioner and the sheriff for bringing this to Aldine and helping us make our community safer. Thank you.
Briefly in Spanish as well. Esta mañana estamos aquí para anunciar o dar información. Ya hace un año que el comisionador García nos dio los fondos necesarios para lanzar este programa. El programa usando la tecnología conocida como ShotSpotter nos da un aviso cuando hay tiroteo en una comunidad y nos ayuda a poder responder mucho más rápido a esa escena. Entonces, gracias al liderazgo del sargento Richie, que nos ayudó a implementar ese programa, y también a grandes oficiales que tenemos en la comunidad, como el oficial Suárez, que trabajan en la comunidad y responden a estas llamadas, han podido encontrar evidencia de armas que han sido disparadas, los cartuchos, han podido recuperar armas que han sido robadas, han podido arrestar a individuos que estaban disparando en la comunidad. Y para nosotros esta es una prioridad, como dijo el director ejecutivo del East Aldine District. Esta era un área donde pasa mucho esto y la gente a veces no comprende que es contra la ley poder disparar un arma en manera de celebración o a contra de alguien más. Entonces ahora tenemos esta nueva tecnología que nos ayuda a mejorar la respuesta y tratar de hacer una diferencia en la comunidad. Entonces le agradecemos mucho al comisionador García por su liderazgo, por conocer un problema y tratar de buscar solución. And so, in closing, at this point, again, we're very pleased with where we're at with the pilot program. I think, again, it continues to be a situation where we want to continue to assess the boundaries, continue to assess the technology. Again, I think we're very successful thanks to the leadership of the individuals that you see here collectively in terms of leadership, but all levels as well, from the front lines of Deputy Suarez to Sergeant Ritchie, that really we owe a lot to, because he really put the framework in place for it to be successful, and not standing up here is Lieutenant Santos as well, that's coming back to the district, or is back in the District 2 community now, and we appreciate his proactive leadership out there. Just him alone is going to make a big difference in really attacking this issue, and we want to continue to see how we can improve. It's about process improvement, always seeing how we could be better, and assessing where we're at and seeing what else can be done, and just whether it be the employee to empower commissioner, or whether it be this, it's about being solutions oriented. You continue to show that, and we're very grateful for the investment in public safety to the Sheriff's Office. So we'll take any questions.
En español brevemente, nada más para ser un poco más conciso. ¿Cuál ha sido el resultado? ¿Está usted contento con el resultado y cuáles las expectativas para el futuro?
Pues tenemos las diferentes estadísticas aquí. Debemos que estas no hubiéramos encontrado mucho de estas estadísticas, porque antes era muy difícil responder a esas llamadas. Muchas veces pasan en la hora de ya noche, está oscuro y no hay información muy específica. Entonces, cuando iba, por ejemplo, la oficial Suárez, iba y decían, pues escuché disparos, pero no sé dónde fueron. Pues es muy difícil en noche poder encontrar un cartucho pequeño que tal vez está ahí, o tal vez está escondiendo a alguien atrás de un árbol o algo. Ahora puede ella responder de una manera más directa, más estratégica, con la ayuda de la tecnología que nosotros utilizamos con este programa. Entonces, para nosotros va muy bien. Queremos seguir monitoreando para ver cómo podemos mejorar el programa. El equipo del comisionado García está en punto de estos detalles y viendo qué más se puede hacer. Entonces, ya lo hemos expandido un poco desde cuando se inició en principio. Ahora cubre cerca de 5 millas, pero nos gustaría ver un poco más, pero también queremos que sea una inversión inteligente.
Sure.
Sí.
Crime is top of mind. I mean, we saw that with the Kinder Institute, but we've seen a study this week. A lot of Houstonians, people in Harris County, think more boots on the ground is the answer, right? More deputies is the response to crime. How does this help as you all navigate more cadets through the academy, more hiring? How does technology help? Does it help?
Yes, well, crime is top of mind for everyone, not only through the recent results of the study, but it's always my North Star is making sure that our community is safe, and public safety is number one. So there's a number of strategies that are needed. It's not just one. Yes, I do believe we do need more boots on the ground. We're a growing metropolis that has a lot of different threats to it, whether it be critical infrastructure that exists here, as well as the more criminality in many individuals, more dangerousness. We've seen these catalytic converter thefts that are running rampant, and the individuals behind those are much more violent. It's not just a simple theft, if you will. So there are a lot of threats. But specific to this, I've always believed that it's important to be solutions-oriented. It's important to look at best practices to see what works, what else could be added to the arsenal, so that our deputies have a variety of tools. So I think that this is one example of that. Making sure that they have a quicker response to the scene, making sure that they are now able to potentially, and they have made arrests of people that would have been out there. And I'll tell you, historically, working patrol, that was sometimes very, very rare to actually make an arrest when somebody just fired randomly, because by the time you got out there, time had elapsed, they had fled or whatever. Now, because of the quick response, there's at least a greater chance that they're going to get out there. And it sends a message to the community that we care, that we're trying to do something about it. And so this is just one more strategy, and we very much appreciate it, along with the recent investments. For example, Commissioner Garcia also led the effort to create our Viper program that's going to tackle those arrest warrants for the most violent individuals in Harris County. So I think it's a multi-pronged strategy that we're all committed to.
Sheriff, 2 questions. First, probably for the Commissioner. How much does the three-year program cost?
The 3-year program is approximately $1 million. That came specifically out of my office budget, not out of, we didn't craft it out of the general fund. I took it out of my budget because Aldine is specific to Precinct 2, and I wanted to make sure that we were addressing an area that the community identified issues for. And so we want to make sure that that area was studied through a pilot initiative. And as I mentioned, this is year 1 of a 3-year initiative. So approximately, $1 million. It's not that much, but it's in the
For the
neighborhood.
first year or for all 3 years?
For all 3.
Okay. Second question is you've highlighted the positive aspects that you've seen so far. What negatives are there to ShotSpotter? And I ask because there are organizations that spend a lot of time trying to convince cities and counties to not do this. And the first city in Texas that tried it ended up after the pilot saying as much good as comes from the program, it wasn't worth the cost to them. So I'm sure you've seen there must be some validation there. There must be some negative.
Yeah, I'll give one response. I'll let the sheriff add his perspective. Look, coming up with resources to implement anything is always a challenge. I mean, you got to divide that the county coffers up in a particular way to bring resources. We have, one of our first initiatives was to provide the sheriff's office with multiple academies to help deal with attrition in the organization. That costs money. So money is the biggest challenge to this. It's technology. It's an investment that we make, and we make not really knowing what the results are, but hopeful that it will provide a return on investment. However, for other cities, I can't speak to that. I can't speak to other parts of the country that have implemented ShotSpotter and have had mixed results. My commitment is that as long as the sheriff's office remains supportive of ShotSpotter, that it is bringing a tangible difference to the community, then I will continue looking for funding to put into it. Sure.
Some of the potentially, I guess, negative comments, I think that at times may come up, and not specific to our program. We haven't really received that, but just speaking more broadly, has been at times that there's a concern that somehow the technology could pick up private conversations, that type of thing. The use of technology can be concerning to some, but we haven't heard that directly, but we have no ability to be able to pick up conversations. So that's not a privacy issue for us. It's not something that for us is realistic. The other one is more, perhaps more over-policing, if you will. We're now using technology, but it's almost counterintuitive because our experience has been that the community, especially where there is an element of crime, whether it be gunfire or just general violence, do want to see more officers and deputies out in the field protecting them. And the community, I think you've heard that Deputy Suarez has said that they do appreciate seeing more people out there, and that they do see that now we do respond, where before it's like, hablamos y no hace nada. We call and nobody does anything. And so now, and there's also apathy and a general fear of calling in because they don't want to be the one that calls in on a neighbor that habitually gets out and fires a gun, and now you have to live next to them. So those are some general concerns. I don't know if you've heard specific negative comments about the program in general. I've read stories in the past in other jurisdictions. I can't speak to them, but we try to be very thoughtful when we roll a program out, looking at the data, closely monitoring the program, getting feedback from the frontline deputies and others. So as much as we can mitigate any potential concerns with it, then we're going to do that. And there's always room to pause if we have to, if something's just that we see a red flag on something, but so far we just haven't. We see a lot of more positives than negatives. Anything could be dissected and find pros and cons for everything, but so far we've seen a great deal of benefit from it.
Have you seen an increase of false alarms maybe?
No increase of false alarms with the use of technology. We look at that as well to see how accurate it is, and they do a phenomenal job of really honing in and really seeing what's going on. And I also want to make a point as well, just to make sure that I'm clear on this. This isn't simply about celebratory gunfire. If somebody's firing at someone, like a drive-by shooting that does occur out there, unfortunately, in this community, we're also going to hear it if it's within that area as well. So now we can potentially arrest suspects, get to someone and apply a tourniquet or something, life-saving measures as quickly as possible, where in the past there was a delay in getting information. Just think about the process of, I heard a sound, should I call in or not, time's ticking. I do decide to call, I call dispatch, I get asked, do I need fire, police, ambulance? I get a call taker, it ends up going to dispatch, or it ends up getting routed to a patrol car. You hear all just the time ticking away here. Being able to get those alerts almost in real time, it's just really a game changer when it comes to this, because we could respond a lot quicker and potentially make an arrest or save a life.
You talk about privacy and then the response times, and we saw the video, but she's working on a cell phone, right? On her county computer where we normally see calls dispatched from, and that cell phone's blurred. So can you walk me through, like, how does it work? It just, someone shoots a gun and nobody needs to call 911, it just pops up on a cell phone?
Oh, it is through an alert system where the technology will pick up generally kind of a general area where the gunfire happened. So we're basically receiving the information that a citizen would have called in. We're just receiving it more in real time through the use of technology that's basically picking up that there was a sound, and then that's probably consistent with gunfire, and then it sends a message, an alert, if you will, that we receive in real time instead of routing it through the traditional, leave it up to the citizen.
Like how accurate? Like
It's very accurate, within a small radius. I'll let Sergeant Ritchie speak on that, because part of it too is because we want to make sure that we also just don't give every element of it, because if not, I mean.
Because I just didn't know if,
Yeah,
since the response time, Sergeant, is just faster because you guys have this technology set up, so deputies are going to get the pings, so they're just factually closer anyway to the call.
Right, so the patrolmen are already out on the street. So typically what happens when a citizen calls that in, their ears don't work like the sensors do. So to their ear, it came from somewhere down the street. With these sensors, it puts us within 82 feet.
82 feet.
They, ShotSpotter guarantees that 90% of the time, we will find some type of evidence of that gun being fired within 82 feet of where it actually occurred.
And then does it record it? Because she mentioned in the video that she can play it back and listen.
Yes. So they get a notification on their laptop, on their MDT, and basically it'll pop up, it'll show them on the map where it is, and they can play that sound back. They can actually zoom in on it, and the program will show shot placement. So when you're playing it, it will go pop, 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 pop if they were driving down the road. If they were sitting still, then they know that was a static gunfire event and not a possible drive-by.
Right. And beyond the shell casing, can you submit that to the DA's office for evidence, that video?
So we have the ability to generate a report off of that, and the digital report will embed, I guess you can call it a video of that shooting alert.
So that would probably be used more on the prosecution side of it, once it does get to prosecution, to play back that. But just to amplify a little bit about what Sergeant Ritchie said, that for me is very important. Look, I care deeply for my deputies that are out there. I mean, it's personal for me, and I want to make sure that they have as much information as they have. And Sergeant Ritchie, correct me if I'm wrong, but if, with these switches now that are out there, in fact, in District 2, an apartment complex out very close to this, an HPD officer was killed, and a gun switch was used, one of those switches. I want them to know, if they hear it, if it's that type of rapid fire, so that they know now from an officer safety standpoint what they're dealing with. Is it a staggered shot where it's pow, 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 just 3 or 4 shots and that's it? Or like he said, is it a moving sound where it's a potential drive-by? All that's information. In the past, they would have never had that type of information.
And the system will actually classify it as well.
There you go.
Single gunshot event, multiple full auto.
We'll take, yeah.
I just wanted to enhance, I know that you got the information. The program is approximately $1 million, $780,000 to be exact, over a 3-year period.
But as Deputy Suarez mentioned, if somebody's life was potentially saved already, I think it's just a price to that family alone. You know, the cost to an entire system, if we could potentially arrest somebody that would have been a chronic shooter out there, or lead us to a homicide suspect on another case with that same weapon, the price is immeasurable if you look at the potential impacts of life saved and successful prosecutions.
So what about potential, the data being a potential incriminating evidence against an individual? Has that been considered, or is that considered a very circumstantial type of evidence that probably would not hold up in court?
The ShotSpotter, we've talked to them about that as well. They have experts that are able to testify about the use of the technology when it is deployed and is utilized successful to make an arrest. So they do have that service available if and when it's needed. But typically, we're not only ever going to rely just on the use of the technology. It just really gives us an alert. At that point, it's up to a Deputy Suarez or others to actually make their case, collect evidence. You know, are there any witnesses? What type of other factors are present to be able to make an arrest? Because we still have to obviously get the charge accepted through the traditional process with the district attorney's office and things like that. So when we make an arrest, we're pretty certain it's a solid arrest. The probable cause was there to make an arrest. And obviously, it's up ultimately for a successful prosecution, but some of those factors are out of our hands.
One follow-up. Unless somebody else had a
Okay,
question.
Sí, en español para Estrella TV. A partir de que notaron la efectividad de este sistema, ¿en qué otras áreas de Houston que también son puntos alarmantes de la ciudad sería adecuado aplicar el sistema y el porqué de detectar este tipo de situaciones?
Sí, en este momento solamente lo tenemos en esta área nosotros. Parece que también estamos considerando otras zonas. Estamos trabajando muy cerca con el comisionador para ver si podemos revisar las áreas donde hay más crimen, donde hay armas que están siendo disparadas, y podemos implementar este tipo de tecnología, pero todavía no estamos ahí por ese momento. Este es un programa que se lanzó por medio solamente de 3 años para estudiarlo bien antes de hacer ese tipo de inversión, y queremos ver que fuera eficaz. Y si lo es, parece ser que sí es eficaz. Entonces ahora podemos determinar dónde más lo podemos llevar el programa en un futuro.
¿Cuáles áreas serían?
Pues en la parte del condado, allá, no quiero decir específicamente pero hay zonas donde ha habido crimen, mucho tiroteo, muchas otras partes. Allí en la parte de Aldine hay espacios donde se tienen que cubrir todavía, que no están conectados con esta tecnología. Entonces ahí es donde tenemos que comenzar. Okay.
My follow-up was just the specific concern that the other Texas city had, that I have not been out to the neighborhood to ask if people are concerned. But was that if I just do the math here, in 97% of the cases, nobody's arrested and no gun is seized. In other words, the overwhelming majority of the time, even if it's 100% accurate, you're going in there with lights and sirens and you're not arresting anybody and you're not finding a gun, which would make sense if they're shooting and running away. But has that come up as a potential concern? And I think that was the exact concern over in San Antonio, that in the end, even though there were people arrested, there were guns collected, in the overwhelming majority of the cases, you went in with lights and sirens, found nobody, so you just had constant, thousands of times this happening with no arrest, no gun seized.
Deputy Suarez could probably speak to this, but she doesn't always go with lights and sirens immediately. I think, for officer safety as well, it's a matter of she also doesn't want to just alert, hey, I'm arriving here, I'm an open target here. So depending on her instincts and her training and her experience out there in the area, she may simply just get to the area quickly, but then, just approach in a more observant way, just to see if she hears anything or whatever. So I know it's not always lights and sirens. 2 is that the reason these this particular area was identified is because it does have a high incidence of discharging firearm and some general crime in the area. And so even if there wasn't a successful location of a gun or an arrest, it doesn't hurt to still have more deputies coming through there. They're not going out there to target anyone in particular. They're going there with a specific mission in mind, which is a gun was fired, whether the person fled or not. And at least now in the past is hopefully it does send the message that there will be a quicker response, as we've heard from the community, that they do see the greater response, and many are appreciative of that, and they feel that somebody does care about it, and that it's unacceptable. Because maybe nothing happened today, but sooner or later, as we saw with a nurse that was killed on New Year's Eve a couple of years back, you know, eventually those bullets will come down, damage property, hurt someone, hurt an innocent child or adult or someone, and I would rather us have arrived quickly and be able to either make an arrest or save someone's life than where were they? It took them hours to get here, or it was a low priority. They never came. You know, so again, I mean, part of the effort, as I was saying, that there's still additional things we want to do is we want to, on our side, from the Sheriff's Office, be more proactive and working closer with the community as partners to really make sure that we're doing more follow-up other than just responding, you know, trying to address the gunfire proactively even before the use of ShotSpotter so that people know that we're out there, that we care, and just don't be firing your guns. And that's something that Executive Director Cantu had been doing even before the technology is raising awareness out in the community.
I have a question from the Chronicle. Wondering if there's any statistics or even anecdotal evidence that level of gun crime or gun calls has gone down since the implementation of ShotSpotter.
I don't have that. We've heard general comments from the community that.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead, Richard Cantu.
Yeah, we have a monthly public safety committee where members of the community are welcomed and participate regularly, civic club presidents, neighborhood leaders, and the response is that we're hearing less gunfire. And so, and I myself have overheard a conversation amongst some youth in the neighborhood that said, we can't fire our guns at New Year's because they're going to know, they're going to come look for us. And so, you know, the word is out that that they will come to your front door or at least to your yard looking for evidence. And I just wanted to also touch on the fear factor. Before ShotSpotter, we would hear about gunfire on a particular dead-end street or something, and we would go out and talk to, along with our deputies, talk to some of the neighbors, and they were afraid. They didn't want to say where they think it was coming from. And I remember talking to a Spanish-speaking member of our community who was physically afraid to respond to me when I said, where do you hear it coming from? And her little daughter, about 6, 7 years old, said, it comes from our backyard, meaning the neighbor behind them. And the fear on the face of the mom was something I'll never forget. And so, you know, I don't know how much of that happens, but I know it's happening. People are not calling in because it is literally their neighbors doing it. And so this gets a response from our deputies that wouldn't have been there before, and that's so important.
Do you, like neighborhood crime watch signs and all these other, you know, report crime, your neighborhood's patrolled by so-and-so, do you all have in the East Aldine district signs that say ShotSpotter's up and working?
I don't think we have any.
No, we don't have.
Okay. And then you said this was personal for you, Mr. Cantu. So if you could talk to me about your feelings before this technology and where your feelings are now, what's the before and after for you?
Well, it's what I just said, that deputies have the tools and they have the ability to.
You said this was personal for you. So before this, what did you feel like? And with this, with your ask for help being heard, how do you feel now?
I recently lost my daughter to gun violence, Halloween of 2021. And so that's why I say it's personal. Any kind of gunfire in our community is personal to me. And the less we have of it, the better for all of our neighbors in our community. So we appreciate this program.
Thank you.
Yeah, so again, anything in closing, I think anything to reduce gun violence is worth its investment. It's worth a try, and it seems to be working, and we want to continue to do more of it. We did look at some of the data ourselves internally, and it did appear from our analysis, if I remember correctly, that we did see a reduction in the number of notifications, the number of incidents that were happening. So it did seem to be trending downward in terms of it just wasn't continuing to be at the high level that it was before. We're still not where we need to be, but it definitely, again, as we continue to assess it, seems to be moving in the right direction. But thank you all very much. Muchas
Thank you so
gracias.
much.
Sure. Can you comment, make some brief comments on the scene